Hey, I'm wearing the same sweatshirt. I knew I would have this guest. This is actually for the listeners. This is actually Mike's company, like Scavenger Saints. I don't know the website, but I'm going to make sure to list it in the description and everything. And I'm like, okay, sure enough, he's not going to wear this sweatshirt, so I'll wear it to help promote his brand. But sure enough, it's okay. Yeah.
Of course, so I'm going to wear it, dude.
That's me. Growing out your beard again, you know. So, so let me just play around with the sound here really quick. Okay. So you guys, Mike is actually like a friend of mine. It must have been at least like 4 years ago at this point, since I met him in HL, basically kind of like the Czech Institute. It's like a holistic health institute, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, the first time I saw him, I'm like, man, this guy's on point. He's like 6'3". He looked like really healthy and vital. His skin looked great as well. And just, he was like, even I was like too lazy to work out at lunch breaks. You know, I would just go and like lay on the grass or something. But Mike was like in the gym training and everything. I would just do the McGill Big Threes, remember? And then like call it a day. I'm like, I'm done for the day.
Yeah.
And, but he was in there training, man. And he's like a great example of, which is honestly rare these days, but like an actually like healthy health professional, the irony, right? So it's rare to run into people like this, and it's always great to chat with them just to kind of see how they've actually made it work in the real world, under real world stresses. Mike owns a pretty thriving company as well, where he has to manage a lot going on, but he still puts his like mental and physical health first, which it's easy to kind of lose nowadays, you know, because a lot of times, especially in Western cultures, you're typically kind of like easily fall into the mindset of like, if you're not dying for your job or your career, you're not doing your job or career. And it's easy to kind of stumble into that when you're employed or self-employed or whatever. So, but I know it hasn't always been this way for you, Mike. So I think your story is great, and a lot of people can relate to it and take a lot out of it. So I just want to kind of focus this podcast and show on you and your story and how you went about on an honest health and wellness journey, instead of kind of succumbing to like quick symptom management strategies, which, you know, like medical drugs or stuff of that sort, which may work in the short term, temporarily a little bit, but then the symptoms always return because the belief system was never changed that led to the problems, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just going to be casual coffee shop talk. So you're welcome to start wherever you like in your journey. And I'll try to sound sophisticated and throw some good questions your way.
Yeah. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I've had the good fortune of encountering good teachers. And like you said, good teachers are rare. Teachers who actually live what they teach are rare. And in my line of work, in our line of work, you know, I'm a health and wellness professional, a therapist, a coach, you could say. I'm my most important client. You know, if I am not living the principles that I teach, then I just become another depleted, sick, struggling individual, and I'm not worth anything to the people who are coming to me. So in my life, I've made a very clear priority that nothing is placed above my health and wellness. And that's not a selfish commitment. I think, in my view, that's like the ultimate selfless commitment, because the more vital you are, the more energy you have, the more skillful you will be of service in the world. So a lot of guys I work with fall into this trap where they don't have the time to prioritize their well-being. They're fathers or they're entrepreneurs or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that prioritizing your well-being makes you better at everything that you do. So it's really the greatest gift that you can give to the people in your life and the world at large.
Well, so obviously, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, it wasn't like always the case for you. I actually remember like maybe a week ago or so, you posted an old picture of yourself, you know, and in terms of the transformation. So let's kind of start with back there. Like what situations led to that? And then I guess like what, you know, paying teachers or what circumstances happened in your life that made you like, this isn't a sustainable path in my life. I need to like maybe do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, so I'll give you a bit of a background, brief bio. I'm living in Venice Beach, California. I've been here for the past uh, 13 years, I think. But I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. And, my whole inquiry into what is real health, what is real wellness, was motivated by my own suffering. I can look back on a chapter in my life where things were pretty dark. You saw the old school picture. That was when I was 22 years old. I'm 38 now. I feel more energy than I did then. But at that point in my life, I didn't really have any fundamentals of nutrition, hydration, that kind of stuff. It's like I was eating a standard American diet. That's the household I was brought up in. And then on top of that, I had a lot of emotional turbulence going on. I was struggling with depression, low self-worth. I was regulating that or medicating that with alcohol. And then I would get into trouble with alcohol. I would get drunk, get in a fight, get locked up. And this just was happening a lot. And when I was like 20, the years in between 18 or 17 and 22 were like crazy. And I got to a point where I was like, man, this isn't just going to resolve itself. This isn't, I think my mentality was like, this is my wild youth. And one day the course will correct itself. But it doesn't just happen unless you make it happen. And so my life got challenging enough where I was like, God damn, I got to get right with the man in the mirror. And I got to learn how to heal this guy. I got to figure this guy out. I got to learn how to love this guy. And that set me off on a trajectory of an inquiry into meditation and really like mind, body, well-being. It's not your physique is important. You want to beautify the temple. You want to feel good about your reflection in the mirror, but the real work is so much deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. It's really, in my view, the whole path is about learning to love yourself as you are right now without placing any conditions on that. So it's not, I'll feel good about myself when I lose 20 pounds. I'll feel good about myself when I make more money. I'll feel good about myself when I get the girl. No. It's right now. You have to make the decision to love and care for the person that you are, and care for the person that you are in a way that demonstrates that you have reverence for yourself. And then that boils down to the way you manage your daily life. What do you eat? What time do you go to bed? What's the quality of your water? What's your movement like? So it's a little, if a man's operating system, as mine was basically like, I'm not worthy of my own love and respect until I do X, Y, Z. It can be motivating in the short term, and there's a fear that if I just choose to love myself, that's somehow weak, or if I do that, then I won't get anything done. But in my experience, that practice, that decision to love the man in the glass comes with an enormous amount of energy that you then channel into your cultivation of health and wellness. And then the more energy you put into your cultivation of health and wellness, the more energy that those practices give back to you, the more energy you have to put into the practices. And now you're living in like this positive feedback loop of love and energy. And, I'll circle it back to the man I once was. When I look back on the struggles that I had as a younger man, 22 years old, I couldn't imagine that life could be the way life is now. So for anybody who watches this or is watching now, if you're struggling, know that things can get better. And you might come to a place where you look back, as I have, on the struggles that I was enduring, and I say, oh, okay, I know I had to go through that so that I could become what I am, and so that I can help people who are going through that now.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a few like really important things in terms of the irony of how like putting like yourself first kind of comes off as very selfish, especially kind of in Western cultures. It's kind of like, oh,
Hmm.
you got to put your family first, this first, that first. But usually, like, at least from my observation, what happens if you don't get your needs met first, whether it be like in a relationship or it be like in a long-term career, for sure the relationship or the career could work out. But the problem is like when you're not getting your needs met, you kind of grow disgruntled towards that job over time, you know? So let's say, like, as a quick example,
Sure.
um, let's just say you want to be an artist, you know, but uh, you got a job as a factory manager or something of that sort, you know? So your ideal, your core value would be like basically like sitting at the beach, like drawing paintings of nature, et cetera, et cetera. But you landed the manufacturing job because it may have been perceived as more like financially secure or something of that sort. So maybe like a year or two, it's okay, you know, because you do get that consistent paycheck or whatever. But in the back of your head, because there's a disconnect in core values, and once again, your needs aren't being met, you kind of grow disgruntled towards the work, you know. And then, like, let's say a project is behind and one of your doesn't do their job, then you kind of don't want to do the job. Now you're not liking the coworker because you have to do more of the work that you don't want to do because of them. And then there's some friction and tension that grows there. And you know, a lot of people do continue their career paths that way for 20 or 30 years, and they might seem kind of successful on paper in the sense that their LinkedIn profile is like a director, you know, executive, but at the end of the day, they're kind of like miserable people. So it's either like you burn out on that job altogether, or you kind of stay with it, but you end up being miserable. And it's the same with relationships. If there's
Yeah.
like a disconnect with core values and you're not having your needs met, in fact, you probably just have to be an actor in a way just to keep the relationship going, like constantly not being yourself. That creates a lot of like insidious stress. And then you will have
Mm.
you will be disgruntled like towards that person, and most likely the relationship doesn't work out. But if it does, it's just like basically held together by misery and stuff of that sort of. And each of the partners make themselves miserable. And you also mentioned like something super important as well, in the sense that um, maybe you can touch on this a lot more in detail, but in the sense that a lot of people in this, in a way, like focus too heavily. And I always tell people like, man, you're not going to really create lasting change in any kind of transformation or any health journey if literally your focus is just on working out and eating better. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I have a health problem, I'm like 20 pounds overweight, I just need to eat a little bit better and work out a little bit more, and somehow that's going to solve my problems. In reality, it
Yeah.
maybe in some circumstances be the spark that leads people to seek real truth and answers, which go a lot deeper than obviously nutrition and working out. But most of the time, people just really honestly, genuinely believe, like, hey, I got this issue. All I need to do is just work out a little bit more and eat a little bit better. And I'm sure you run into this time and time again. And I was just wondering if you can kind of go into more detail regarding the importance of having to go above that.
Yeah. I think really it all boils down to your relationship with yourself, and your primary work is to make that a healthy relationship. You know, I worked as a fitness trainer for years, and I enjoyed it for a period of time. But to your point, I was constantly working with people who had deeper issues than needing to lose 15 pounds. And when your perspective is, okay, life, something feels off, I don't feel good, I need to lose 15 pounds or some superficial aesthetic goal because I can't accept myself the way I am right now, one of two things happens. You have a bit of a drill sergeant in your head and you will yourself to the gym, and you either achieve the thing that you set out to do, but you're still left with this same internal operating system that fails to accept you. And now it's going to be, well, another 15 pounds or a bodybuilding show or whatever. That will happen. Or the other possibility is you beat yourself up inside so much that you just quit. You know, you're not enjoying the process. Um, so it's it's much deeper than any kind of aesthetic aim. Um, when you land in this perspective and this perspective of self-love, you know, I frame this as the real warrior's work. It sounds airy fairy, but it's the real work. And when you practice that and you practice it and it becomes real, it comes with a lot of energy. And then because you love yourself and you understand that movement is good for you, going to the gym is no longer an act of discipline or like some heroic endeavor that you gotta kill your inner bitch and get it done. It's a no-brainer, and it's actually enjoyable. And you're no longer buying into this illusion that there's some future destination where you'll be able to say, yeah, good job, I like you, I love you. You're giving yourself that now, and that becomes the fuel that motivates you further and further than you ever even thought you could go. But really, it's about taking the carrot off the end of the stick. You know, we're chasing this carrot. We think we have to look a certain way to get this carrot of self-love. We think we have to earn a certain amount of money. We got to do all of these things. But just give yourself the carrot. The carrot is unconditional loving acceptance of yourself as you are right now. Just eat the carrot. It's right here. You're the only one preventing you from having that. Eat the carrot. And then, like I said, that comes with a lot of energy. And that's been my experience.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like maybe a Western culture issue of always seeking further advancement outside of oneself. It's actually, I used to be like a psychology fanatic, even graduated my GPA from college in psychology, et cetera, et cetera. But I just found like over time, I actually renamed it as industrial psychology. Like typically like modern day psychology is like, I find it just focuses on like back in the day, kind of what you're hinting at, like real psychology was just all about discovering who you are and then just being that person and not actually changing anything or getting you better at something, where like psychology today is like, oh, let's work on your anxiety, and so you can work more or you can have more financial success, or let's work on your depression, better relate and more sex and more money, or let's work on this and let's work on that. It's always kind of like changing certain belief systems, and it really has nothing to do with discovering like who you actually genuinely are and living close to that person. It's always kind of,
or how to care for your actual physical flesh and bone. I've had clients that I've worked with for 6 months or 1 year, and they've said, and this has happened more than a few times, wow, I feel like we've gotten further and deeper than I have in 4 or 5 years of talk therapy. It's not to say that the whole field is worthless. It's not. There's a place and a time for talking things out, but how can you neglect the basic tenets of well-being? Movement, sleep, hydration, nutrition. If your wellness professional isn't checking in on those things, what are you doing? A lot of heady problems dissolve of their own accord when you start managing your physical body intelligently.
Yeah, Mike, you do have some little noise in the background. I don't know if it's one of your like meditation devices.
I don't know. I don't hear anything.
Oh,
I think it's
okay.
my chair.
I thought it was maybe one of these like meditation devices to get you to focus on some sound. I'm like, Mike,
nah, but that's another. You bring up the practice of meditation. For me, that has been so foundational in getting myself in order. It's like whatever your endeavor is, whatever your goal is, if it's physical, if it's financial, if it's in relationship, if it's whatever it is, your mind is going to be involved. So taking the time to sit with your mind, to understand how to govern it better, to come to a place where you can actually intentionally select certain thoughts and prevent your mind from generating certain thoughts. It's a meta skill, contemplative practice that leads to performance excellence in all endeavors. So in my work, it's a critical foundation. There's a lot of like new age spirituality out there about positive thinking and they neglect to tell you how meditation practice, and again, in my view, I frame it like warriors work. It's not a passive, relaxing pastime. It's effortful, diligent practice, the cultivation of specific attentional skills. You can approach your meditation practice with the same intensity that's required in seeing results in the gym. You know, I think I'm a meditation teacher, so a lot of people come to me to help refine their practice. And I have a common experience of saying, okay, well, do you meditate? And they'll say yes, but they're having a lot of problems, depression, anxiety, whatever. So I'm sure you've had the experience, Eugene, of working with somebody who's terribly deconditioned, not in great shape, but they say, well, yeah, I work out. I work out 4 or 5 days a week. Well, what are you doing in the gym? You know, working out is such a loosely defined term, and meditation is such a loosely defined term. So what you're doing and the way you're approaching both your workouts and your meditation matters. The intensity that you bring to it. I've had the good fortune of encountering teachers who frame meditation practice as an effortful, heroic endeavor that requires diligence and strong determination. And for any man who thinks that meditation or inner work is hippy dippy, my challenge is to give it a try. You know, it's very challenging, especially in a world, in a modern culture where the primary means of emotional regulation is distraction. To just sit, to just let the distraction go and just sit with yourself, you know, see what comes up. It's hard work, but it's totally worth doing. And in my view, like the only thing.
Well, how's your daily schedule look like? Can you kind of go over a general overview of how your week looks like and examples of like how you're tempted at times to miss a meditation session or a workout session, possible business endeavor or stuff like that, and kind of what you tell yourself mentally to kind of keep prioritizing your mental and physical health?
Yeah, I think, you know, there'll be days where I feel like I don't have the gas to get to the gym, or I would rather not sit on my meditation cushion. And some days I don't. I would say the vast majority of days I get it done. But there's no secret there. I mean, it's just cultivating that muscle of discipline, like just choosing to do the thing over and over and over and over and over again. And eventually it just becomes procedural. Like there's not a lot of friction there anymore. It's not like doesn't require a lot of discipline. It's just part of the day. But you have to go through that. Each person has to go through that on their own. You have to engage in a bit of a battle with yourself to get yourself to do the thing that you know is best for you. And that comes down to this right here, the hoodie, Savage and Saint. So with regard to your internal operating system, you know, if you want to implant new habits that are beneficial and pull yourself out of the muck that you're in right now, you're going to need to contact a savage part of yourself that is just not going to settle for the bullshit, that is going to give you a swift kick in the ass and do the thing that you need to do with no excuses. But that by itself is not enough. We also need the saint side that has this capacity to be loving and understanding and compassionate with yourself. Maybe you've had a really hard week. Maybe your task list is just long and you didn't sleep so great. And maybe getting to the gym is not the best thing for you today. So you need to have this capacity to discern that and to be able to treat yourself gently. So between those two poles, savage and saint, is the middle point of balance. And finding that point of balance, I think, is the secret for consistency in the game.
Do you find it's kind of like tough for the average person to do that, working, you know, like 50-hour weeks at like a corporate job or stuff of that sort? What's your advice for that crowd? Oftentimes, like,
yeah,
if you count the driving time to work, the work hours, and then the driving time back, it's basically like an all-day activity. And even if you have some physical hours remaining, it's just you're like so drained and tired, you know, especially since most people have a mismatch in their core values and careers. They might not like working with all their coworkers, which drains their energy even more. After deadline, just sitting all day and being
Sure.
sedentary is also kind of draining. I don't know do you have any input on that?
Yeah, well, the first thing would be, and it's not a quick fix, but you just brought it up. You would have to really look at yourself and discern what your core values really are and inquire as to whether your life reflects those core values. And if it doesn't, then maybe you got to make some changes. I know it's not as easy as if you're working 50 hours and you got a long commute, well, just quit your job and chase your dream. That's an oversimplification of the issue. Maybe you have people who depend on you, children, a family. It's not that simple. But if you start to get clear on what your values are, what your purpose is, then you can start to correct your course so that your daily life reflects that. The goal is really someone should be able to shadow you for your day and then tell you what your purpose is, because it's self-evident throughout the way that you live your life. But that doesn't happen overnight. That's a process, and it's an uncomfortable process. It's not easy to ask yourself those bigger questions and to be honest with yourself about the direction that you're heading in, and is that aligned with the direction that you want to be heading in. It's uncomfortable. Most people don't do it. That's why most people are working jobs that they feel no real soul connection to. So in the short term, are you there? I think
I do have
froze on me.
reception issues. It's been a thing going on for 2 weeks.
Oh,
I
can
fix
hear
it
you.
during the
Hear
week,
you. It
and
just
then on
froze on me.
Saturday it comes around again. Maybe because like more people are using their home internet or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, it's all good. I can hear you loud and clear, but I guess just to wrap that question up, which is a great question, the long-term answer would be what I just articulated. The short-term answer would be, in my experience, a lot of guys, they come to a place where they're like, man, I got to make some changes. And then the first thing they want to do is get to the gym. Like, there's a lot of other low-hanging fruit that you can leverage before you even start to work
Mhm.
out. And actually, you should start to leverage before you work out. So even if you're working 50 hours, you got 10 minutes to come to your contemplative practice. You can find 10 minutes. You can probably find 10 minutes a few times a day. That's a great place to start. After that, you can start to have a look at your breathing, your breath mechanics. You're breathing all day, you can optimize that. And if you optimize your breath, you start to feel more vital energy. Then you can have a look at your sleep. Then you can have a look at your nutrition and hydration. You can still maintain a 50-hour work week and do all of those things. And then you start to have the energy where it's like, okay, I actually need to move. I feel like I got a pep in my step. My body is bouncy. I got to work out. Your workout doesn't need to look like going to the gym for 90 minutes. You could schedule movement snacks throughout your day. Take walks. Walking is critical. Just take a 20-minute walk 2 or 3 times a day. You don't have to go to the gym if your schedule doesn't right now. Where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to, you can get better. It doesn't matter what your daily responsibilities are. You can
Yeah,
make
I
it
also
happen.
to kind of back up your point, I also find just a lot of people don't understand that working out actually takes energy. It doesn't give, you know.
Boom.
You have, the
That's
average
it.
American is
Yeah.
going off like 5 hours of sleep, absolutely exhausted. They get to the gym at like 6 p.m. They have like a Bang energy drink or some other stimulant. Then they do like a
Yeah.
cortisol producing workout, like a boot camp or like a CrossFit, because it's relatively cheap, and it also does give that person that community type feel, which they might not feel like they have, because a lot of people just don't have community in their life anymore, and they're doing that are like super
Yeah.
high intensity, super hardcore, in an exhausted state. So the chances of injury kind of fly through the roof. And even if you don't get injured, I mean, dude, you're going to be like really exhausted and kind of like either two situations, like super short tempered basically all day because you're running on absolute exhaustion, just like super passive in the sense that in the beginning, it'll probably be more like short tempered because cortisol is going through the roof. But because that body produces it in a limited supply. Actually, it just kind of halts the production of cortisol. And then you have this kind of like adrenal fatigue, like zombie type state where you're just kind of, even you're laying in bed and you're kind of strategizing how much energy it's going to take for you to get in your car, drive to the grocery store, get the groceries, and if it's even worth doing that. And then obviously like your sexual vitality definitely declines a tremendous amount, just like your productivity goes down a lot. And that's kind of like the default state that most people are working out in. And then the irony is that like, oh, these workouts are actually helping me with my health. In context dependent, of course, if they're coming from a place like you where they have like a lot of those low hanging fruit already mastered, sure, it would actually add benefit to your day. But if you're coming from like a very depleted, exhausted state of poor nutrition, and I hate to say it, even when I hear a lot of people say like, oh, I eat healthy, I mean, they don't. You know, 9% of the time, obviously don't even really even know what healthy is. Like you ask them like, oh, what is eating healthy? And they're like, oh, I just eat less, or I do fasting, or I do keto or something like that. And they don't even hint on sourcing food or if that diet is right for them at that time in their life. And there's so much intricate details that even go into that. And I feel that's what also keeps them that path, because it's kind of greenwashed. It's painted like you want to be healthy, you do tough workouts, or you do a diet and you take some kind of supplement.
Yeah.
That's basically the Western approach to fitness for the most part. I don't know if you have any tips for people that are kind of stuck in those cycles, because
well, I just have some thoughts on what you said. Firstly, it's a great point, and a point that I often make, that going to the gym, resistance training, working out is an energetic expense. And most people are energetically depleted. And so then they're in the deficit already just based on their lifestyle. And then they're going to the gym and spending more energy than they have. And sooner or later, you know, something's got to give. You either get sick, you get injured, or you just have to quit. Yeah, it's a good idea to leverage that lower hanging fruit. Most people really shouldn't even be in the gym. If you look around, it is unfortunate that in this culture, when you come to a place where you want to make some changes, the first thing you think you should do is go to the gym. I told you I was a fitness trainer years ago, and before I pivoted to, you know, the work I offer now, which is more holistic health and wellness, vitality, which fitness is a critical component, but it's not priority number one. But as a trainer, as I started to advance my thinking and further my education, I started to tell my clients that I cannot in good conscience put you through a hard workout, because you shouldn't do it. It's not good for you. And I lost a few clients because they were addicted to the hard workouts, even though their physiques were not a reflection of the work that they were putting in, because they were so depleted. So for a lot of guys, it's like, you want to just go move the weight, you crush it, you want to get it done. And it feels like, I don't know, wasting time. But to take 2 steps backward and have a look at your lifestyle, to start cultivating energy, to come to a place where you're in an energetic surplus and not an energetic deficit, by letting go of the hardcore workouts for a while, take 2 steps back, you will take 5 steps forward. That was my experience working with
what
you.
a lot of people need to understand is like, especially with, you know, a lot of people go to the gym, sure, they want to be healthy, but a large majority of them just want good as well and just feel good and be pain free. And I mean, to do that, the first cornerstone is just to build enough biological resilience through proper progressive overload. And to have proper progressive overload, you have to be entering in pretty much like 90+% of your workouts, at least in a very well rested state. So it kind of goes back to there's a delusion that like I have to just kill myself every single day in the gym just to see any gains. But if like difficult is all you needed, just go to any boot camps. They're very tough, actually. They have you there running over there, moving dumbbells quickly back and forth here. Then you got to carry this person across the street, this person across the street. But just kind of look at 99% of people in those classes. They like never change. They look the same, and some even look even worse. And it's the same in going to a normal corporate gym like 24 Hour Fitness or Gold's Gym, whatever. It's like you see people there, they're there for literally 5 or 6 days a week. And you see them there for like, you find that if people don't approach it that way, they simply just get, yeah.
Eugene, I just got to pause you because you said you see those people there 5 or 6 days a week, but then your
Yeah,
screen froze. I
apologies
didn't
for that.
catch
The
the rest of the
reception is, I
sentence
see
you
the
said.
reception is going in and off. But you see them there 5 days a week, and I find if they just don't correct that path, it's typically what leads to burnout. Because eventually it's like you're thinking in the back of your head, you're like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm investing all this time, and what am I getting in return for it? I'm looking the same or worse, or maybe I make a little bit of progress, but then
Yeah.
I take 2 steps back. And basically, my average for the year is like no progress whatsoever. So a lot of people are like listening to this stuff and they might be like, oh yeah, Mike and Eugene, they're just saying sleep a little bit better, eat a little bit better, blah, blah, blah. There must be some other magic to it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah.
No, dude, that's the thing. Yeah, what you learn, you've taken rigorous courses of study, and so have I, and you learn that, wow, this shit is so simple. It couldn't be simpler. It's not complicated at all to be healthy. It's not to say that it's easy, because in a culture where everybody's sick, to be healthy requires to remove yourself from cultural norms and be truly alive, truly vital, truly healthy in a culture where that's not the norm. You have to do things that most people don't do. So it's not necessarily easy, but it is very, very,
yeah, in the
very
sense
simple.
that it's easy to understand intellectually, but try to actually apply it in a real
Mm-hmm.
world that basically, if anything, shuns that kind of lifestyle, and try.
Yeah. Which is why it's critical to get in touch with your core values and let them dictate your course. It's also critical, in my view, to have some kind of practice around governing your own mind, because it's your own mind that is going to be the determining factor as to whether you get well or not.
Yeah, and
So,
to touch on your point too, I always say this, but it's like, dude, it's like you have to be insane to try to fit into normal society today, where like 9 out of 10 people, you could literally walk outside anywhere in America these days, and 9 out of 10 people you run into are like full of obesity, misery, and disease. And it's like absolutely insane to
yeah,
try to follow their path, in my opinion. And it's not even my opinion. Just go to
yeah,
PubMed.gov. There are many studies on metabolic health of Americans, easily to find that 9 out of 10 Americans right now are metabolically unhealthy, like 10 American adults rather. And that's like crazy, dude. If you think about like 90% of people are like
that
metabolically
is crazy.
unhealthy.
Yeah,
And what's required to be metabolically healthy isn't even that much. They're not even asking these people to be like Olympians. That would be like one sport. It's like, okay, I'm
no,
exaggerating here, of course, for comedy. Is your heart beating? It is. Okay, you're metabolically healthy. And 90% of people like fail even that test. So like a quick test, even for the listeners right now, I think you're doing what Mike is saying or what I'm saying. Okay, well, how many of you guys are optimizing your sleep and generally sleeping between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. 7 days a week? To optimize, first of all, your body repairs itself physically from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then mentally from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And some people will be like, oh yeah, I sleep those hours. But then you look at their sleeping logs, it's like they sleep those hours like maybe 2 days out of the week. Or sometimes they go like, okay, yeah, I go to sleep
yeah,
at 10, but really they're in bed at 10. They go to they're actually sleeping by 11 p.m. So when you average it out throughout the week, they miss like 7 hours of physical repair time, basically one full day of sleep every single week. And they're wondering why they're never recovering from workouts, or they always have these random pulls or whatever that seem to happen, or their technique is perfect, or their muscle isn't looking quite dense, or just always like mentally foggy, et cetera, et cetera. That's just one example, but we can touch on what healthy eating even means, which could be like a 2 or 3 hour podcast, or what using proper movement as medicine even means, or how to even go about, which I find is the toughest task for most people, identifying your core values and really being genuinely true to them, and actually making your week reflect what you want in your week, instead of constantly having to be like an actor, like in the back of your head, I want to be working 3 days a week, but you're working 6 days a week, and then making up stories of why you need to keep working 6 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. But that brings me to another point. And this is an important one, because I find that like you can't solve a problem with the same belief system that to the problem. And I find people that are looking genuinely for help these days, if anything, it's more confusing than ever now with online like influencers. You know, this credible figure says this, another equally credible figure says the complete opposite of this guy, and then a third guy says both of these guys are like retarded and you shouldn't follow them. And I find it's even sometimes confusing for me. I don't know how it is for you. I invest so much time into education and I still find some things confusing, you know? So I could imagine like the average person can invest that much time into like mental and physical health education. They're just kind of going online and just like this random person says, do this, and they have 2 million followers and they look kind of credible and they're like, okay, I'll do it. But then, you know, anyways, I'll let you take over on this part. Like,
well, I think, yeah, there's a lot of information out there. There's somebody will tell you one thing and produce credible studies as to why they're right. Somebody else will tell you another thing and produce credible studies as to why they're right. This is the information age. There's no shortage of information, and the amount of information out there is paralyzing. I think the solution is to address these simple factors that you and I have been discussing: the state of your mind, the depth of your breath, the quality of your sleep, your nutrition and your hydration, and your movement. And as you start to baseline those practices every single day, you start to awaken your own intuitive somatic intelligence, where you know what you should be eating, you know the way you should be moving, you know how to govern your energy. You're not outsourcing those decisions to some external guru, master, scientist, whatever. You're living in such a way. The human body is the most highly biological attuned advanced instrument in the known universe, as long as you don't fuck it up. So if you engage this process of unfucking it up, a less vulgar way of saying that would be to manage yourself intelligently in a healthy way. You unlock this intuition that knows what you should be doing, and you start to live from that wisdom. It comes from your belly. It comes from your flesh and bone. You know what's true. You know what's not. But it's only because you're growing yourself intelligently. And if you're not, then yeah, you're constantly going to be seeking out, well, Eugene told me to do this, but he said to do that, but I should do this, and I read this in Men's Health, and blah, blah, blah. No. Come here. Come here. You know, the answers are here. You just have to evoke them. And your lifestyle is either evoking the answers or burying them even
yeah, I was just going to say, well, if they're looking for men's health, then they're completely lost and should require a mentor, you know? If they're looking for men's health for health advice.
Yeah, totally, man. I saw this shit a while back of some dude, some black dude. He's a chef in Men's Health, bodybuilder type, juice to the gills. And he was telling people, they did some video on him, and he's telling people that he sleeps 2 hours a night.
I don't know his name. I know about,
yeah. There's so much bullshit out there, man.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. One positive thing to say is, like, be careful, guys, with listening to any kind of influencer online. That includes even me and Mike. I'm going to even throw us into that category too, because even if they happen to be actually extremely competent, the thing is they never met you personally. And in order to really genuinely help someone, you have to really know their current situation and give them like a proper assessment, give them advice on how to deal with that assessment, deal with whatever challenge ABC they're having. You know, like nature is a novelty generator. So it's like there are no two of anything. There are even no two droplets of water that are exactly the same. And then definitely no two even people that are exactly the same. Even if they're twins, even if you look up twins, they're completely different as well. So because they're completely different, they require different approaches. So oftentimes too, what I find, unless you're already like extremely educated in the area, also listening to people online that never met you, it's easy to take their information out of context, you know, as well. And also like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, you actually have the right tool, like meditation, for example, but you're applying it incorrectly. because there's, you know, the one step is the right tool to use, but then also the next step is how do you apply it correctly? And then how do you apply it in a sustainable way to match your specific circumstance? And how long would you need to use that tool for? And what tool does this problem solve, and what tool doesn't it solve? You know, because oftentimes um, information or whatever that psychology is called, I forgot already. But yes, it's important, but then also, you know, you can't just kind of think your problems away. You also have to go out into the physical world and actually develop skills to solve them. For example, like if you have money issues, you can't just kind of like have mental imagery of money flowing into your account or your account being abundant. You have to go out there and get new skills or whatever, start a
Right.
business and kind of make more money that way, while at the same time doing positive affirmations or something of that sort. Because same exact thing when I'm getting back over here. Just, and then also, I mean, at the end of the day, too, just I find sometimes people overcomplicate messages to make them sound unique, you know, to stand out in a marketplace. Because obviously, if they're saying like, oh, you know, you just need to sleep a little bit better, work out a bit more, you know, use movement as medicine, meditate a bit more, actually live true to your core values. And sure, there might actually need to be coaching that goes with it. It's not like a product you can sell. But most people, like at the end of whatever they're trying to confuse you about, say, oh, here's the solution, like a supplement or something, some kind of like very quick fix solution. And I promise you, even to the most minor like mental or physical health issues, there's literally no quick fix most of the time. It's usually a myriad of variables that need to be addressed all at once, that are specific and unique to the individual as well, you know? Um,
Yeah, that's very well stated, man. I like what you said. Nature is a novelty generator. I like that, and it's true. You know, it's and it comes back to my earlier point that no one will save you. You know, it's your responsibility to save you, and the best way to do that is to address these simple, fundamental, foundational aspects of well-being, and that's the secret. You know, that's the work that I do. Some people will call me a teacher. I like to introduce people to the teacher that they are, the teacher that lives inside them. You can evoke that teacher, like I said earlier, by living in a certain way. And you realize that the answers are inside of you. The guru is inside of you. You just have to dig them out. He's buried underneath your awful habits that you've inherited from this culture that's not
yeah,
so
and
well.
touching on the culture and the not so well, I find it, I don't know how it happened or at what time it started to take place, but I find that like corporate propaganda has uniquely made people believe that like what's not important is most important, and what's most important is least important. Meaning like, you know, your career and striving for like a house and a car is like what's very, very important, usually at the expense of like your mental and physical health, et cetera, et cetera. But I always say like, dude, like no matter like
Yeah.
what you're trying to do in life, whether you're trying to be like a computer programmer or like a president of a company or whatever, it's like, how are you going to accomplish literally anything without your mental or physical health? Like, how are you going to accomplish something with major depression or like severe low back pain or something of that sort? Even somehow, if you manage to muster
Yeah.
through it, I mean, it's just like a very painful existence. And then, okay, you know, you get to 40, 45, and on your LinkedIn profile, you're like, I'm a director, and you have this smile, but behind the scenes, it's like you're on 4 to 5 different prescription medications. You know, you need like a bottle of Xanax and 3 Red Bulls just to have enough energy to wash your dishes in the morning. You weren't able to have like sex without Viagra for already like 2 years. It's like, dude, those are all red flags that like your direction and belief system in life is just not sustainable and not healthy for you, which in my opinion is like the deadliest virus of the belief system that leads people to healthy patterns and eventually kills the hosts, and usually unfortunately passes those belief systems down to their kids as well. Because you kind of hinted earlier like, oh, you know, maybe you got to work this job because of your kids, et cetera, et cetera. And I did a in-depth podcast with one of my other clients, a very kind of high-end computer programmer that ended up quitting her field to move off grid with her kid. because she didn't want to be an example of what unhealthy living is to their kids. Because kids, they learn 80% of what they learn from you is just from observation. So it's like when they see you, working yourself to death, gaining a lot of weight because you're eating poorly, you know, abusing or misusing prescription medications because you refuse to change the behavior that led to that problem, they're going to do the same exact thing. They find that acceptable because kids look up to you, especially at an early age, like you're like some demigod, So they're going to copy and paste what you're doing as well. So I feel like the parents' responsibility, especially if you have kids, to show an example of what healthy and sustainable living looks like, because if you're not doing it, guess what?
I agree.
Your kids are going to be the same exact way, and it's your fault, and that's it.
Yeah, I think you could make a pretty strong argument that the greatest gift you can give your children is to be raised by a happy, healthy father or a happy, healthy mother. Not to be raised by a parent who has this perspective that they need to sacrifice their health and happiness for their child.
Yeah, and can you go into your journey of like maybe some mentors that really kind of helped accelerate your process?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I look back, I feel so blessed that I've encountered the teachers that I have. You and I met through the Paul Chek curriculum, holistic health lifestyle coach level 3. So Paul's been a real model of what is possible when you identify your values and live true to them. What's possible with regard to aging gracefully. I think he's in his middle 60s now, and he's strong as an ox. And I have a fitness background, and I mentioned before, I also had done a deep dive into meditation. So some of the meditation teachers I'm so grateful for. One is Shinzen Young. He's an elder. He's probably in his 80s now, former Zen Buddhist monastic, but really just like the real deal. Like my meditation teachers, if you haven't really if you haven't done an exploration of meditation, you may not know that the majority of meditation teachers teach like lightweight kind of stress reduction, which is useful, I guess. But the teachers that I've been drawn to are the teachers who talk about enlightenment, absolute freedom, non-duality, the no self experience. And these are all available to anyone who applies themselves to the practice. Reality becomes very psychedelic when you learn how to concentrate at a very high level. So Shinzen is a teacher who, makes me question reality, or made me question reality in a way that was very useful. George Haas is another one. Dan Brown recently passed away, but he was like a light on planet Earth. And that dude was savage insane, let me tell you. He was like, you think meditation teacher, you think of like a little, namaste, happy, joyful. And he was happy and joyful, but he was also a savage. I mean, he was like, he wouldn't tolerate any bullshit from his students. He was tough. And I remember seeing him and being like, wow, you can be a meditation teacher, master, and still be like a man? Hell yeah. So Shinzen Young, George Haas, Dan Brown. And then, like I said, I had a fitness background, but I had this deep interest in meditation and spirituality. And then I found Paul Chek, and he was like the connecting bridge between physical fitness, because these meditation teachers that I mentioned, they weren't like in the gym. They're not fitness dudes. But Paul was kind of the one that like unified these spiritual curiosity that I had and this spiritual path with the simple, mundane self-management principles of, things like bedtime. And it became very clear to me that the health of your body is an accelerant in your spiritual disciplines or your spiritual inquiry. So it's really those teachers, those men, those wise elders have helped me to find my path, my way. And now it's like everything that I do, there's no compartmentalization in my life. I don't have my workout routine, my martial art routine, my meditation routine, my work, my professional life. It's all the same thing. It's my way. And so that's very liberating for me. So yeah, I'm very grateful that I fell into the laps of the teachers who I encountered, and that I had enough sense to listen and make time to spend time with them, because it's been a very rewarding aspect of my life. And I've been able to, now I'm in a place where, I'm not a youngster. I'm 38 years old, and I've been able to distill what I've gleaned from all of these teachers into my own thing, and now I'm offering that to the world. And so I feel very rewarded in
Mike,
my
I
work.
still think we're young compared to the 80-year-old guy, Always like,
well, we are, but we're not as young. We're not as young as we used to be.
Actually,
I don't either. I never felt younger, to be honest with you, man. My only regret, bro, is I'm like, fuck, man, imagine if I knew this shit when I was 17. So sometimes I have a young guy in the circle. I offer men's work, and you see a youngster come in, and I think, God damn, bro, if you really get this stuff now, you're going to be an actual superhero.
Yeah, I find I just find kind of like the standards have dropped so low, Like you see even 20-year-olds kind of reaching out and they're like, hey, should I do this testosterone? And I'm like, dude, if your testosterone's low at 20, you have like so many other things you need to work on to get those back up, and like a myriad of other things.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said earlier, it's a quick fix. We're addicted to a quick fix, but there's no quick fix in this. It's a long, slow process with no finish line. There's no destination here. It's this constant cultivation, and you have to just enjoy the journey. There is no,
well, where do you think regarding quick fixes? Because I know this is a very popular approach for people in Western cultures. Like I have a problem, I go to my family physician, and they give me medical drugs. And what's your take on where the medical community's management of kind of basically diagnosing symptoms and treating those symptoms with possibly like harmful and dangerous medical drugs, and that's it? Like they literally like don't address like literally anything else. They might tell you like, oh, work out a little more, sleep a little bit better, work.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous, and I don't know, evil.
No, we can
go too far down a rabbit hole, but here's the thing, man, that I'll tell people when they ask me about my work. I say that I am a health professional. I study health and what it takes to be healthy, and I teach people how to be healthy. And I have a very high expectations of the people that I work with, that they're going to have to summon discipline and make changes. The medical profession, I don't think doctors are evil people, but the industry has become such that they are sick professionals. They don't study health, they study sickness. And the totality of their education is how to mitigate symptoms of the problem that is lifestyle. Your problem is a result of how you're living. Your doctor will give you something to numb you out to the symptoms that your body is giving you, to say, please take better care of me. Doctors do not study health. They're largely ignorant in health, and they don't have time to really be with their patients or high expectations of their patients. So if you leave your health in the care of a sick professional, the best that they can do is make you feel less sick, but they cannot help you to feel well. I used to have a doctor, bro. I have health insurance just because it's responsible. I feel like if I get hit by a bus, I'll need to be taken to a hospital, but I don't go to my doctor if I have a problem. But as part of my health insurance, I get a physical once per year. I'm already paying for it, so I figure I might as well check in once a year and see what they're doing. My doctor is obese, literally. It blows my mind. And the once a year that I go to get my physical, just the whole hospital it's sterile with artificial lighting, and it's just such a
Mm-hmm.
I'm sensitive, I do a lot of work that my body is sensitive. I just feel it feels so gross inside the building. So, bullet point, if you take anything from what I just said, take this. If you leave your well-being in the care of a sick professional, the best that they can do is make you
Yeah.
feel less sick. If you want to be well, seek
Yeah, and
out
I
a
would say
wellness
moreover, like
professional.
make you perceive that you're less sick, but you're still sick. Because like for example,
Right.
like an easy one that everyone
Exactly.
understands, if you have a rock stuck inside your shoe, like people like you and I would just tell the person like, hey, let's take the rock out and then let's kind of fix your shoe so you don't get rocks in there in the future when you go running. Where like a medical doctor would tell you like, hey, you got a rock stuck inside your shoe, keep it there. Let's have you take painkillers instead. Will be okay. And how like stupid does that sound, you
Yeah.
know? Uh, it's pretty ridiculous. And then
Yeah.
like you mentioned, when you go in the hospital, I mean, I don't remember the last time I saw like a healthy looking medical doctor or a nurse practitioner.
No.
And
Nurse, exactly. Yeah.
the weird thing is, it's like, I don't know, man. Like I actually interviewed a few. I actually asked this deep question with a few and also on some medical forums online. And I would say like, oh, when you first meet a person, you typically, even if they're relatively healthy, it typically takes um, around like 2 to 3 hours to assess them and to really understand their situation, how they got into that situation, and what really needs to be done to have a complete resolution of that specific situation. And then on the form, the medical docs, some MDs will come in. Oh, like if a person comes in with, they listed like 6 different symptoms, you only have 5 minutes to treat them. You solve it. And I'll be like, dude, I wouldn't ever work in a situation where I only have 5 minutes to talk to a patient, anyways, because I care too about the patient. And if that's all the job or the hospital or
Yeah.
whatever allows me to do, I wouldn't work there. And if you're working there, you're just selfishly looking after yourself and a paycheck instead of the client's well-being. But I think what a lot of medical doctors forgot is they took an oath in medical school to give their clients the best service possible and the best solution possible for their illness. So if the best solution possible for their illness is to change a belief system that's leading to behaviors that's leading to problem ABC, then that's how it should be approached. So if there's a rock inside the shoe, you need to take the rock out. You need to stop telling your client to keep the rock there and take painkillers instead, because that's ridiculous. Now, there is a bit of a two-way road.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they don't want to change. And they use these kind of drug dealers to reinforce that lack of wanting to change as well.
That's true. The most important thing is self-responsibility. And it's easy to sit here and say, oh, the medical system in America is evil and X, Y, and Z. But you have to claim responsibility for yourself. Your well-being is your responsibility. That's self-reliance. That's self-governance. And victim culture is pretty popular right now. There's a whole currency around, how the degrees to which I'm oppressed are somehow valuable as a social currency. And that all makes me quite sick. Claim responsibility for yourself. And in claiming responsibility for yourself, you know, spend less time with your doctor, because chances are your doctor doesn't know shit and
Yeah, of
doesn't
course,
care about
unless
you.
you want just to be given medical drugs. And then guess what? You have high blood pressure system
Yeah.
that led to that.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Okay, it's going to lead to a myriad of other health issues in a long enough time frame. So what's your only option? Like to be on 50 medical drugs by the time you're like 60 or something and looking and worse than ever before? I even have a few of my former clients here. They already shared their stories, so it's okay that I share them. Like Tim was like, dude, on like so many medical drugs for pretty much 20 years of his life. We got him on a program basically just mastering the key concepts we've actually talked about today. In 1 year, he's off like 9 medical drugs. What happened?
Yeah, it's amazing, man. It's amazing what happens when you claim responsibility for your well-being and you seek out somebody who can help you along the way, like you. So that's amazing. You know, one thing comes to mind. The holidays just passed. I go home to Philly and stay at my parents' house. I sit in the living room with them. They watch the evening news. And it just blows my mind that every commercial break, literally 4 out of 5 of the commercials are for some pharmaceutical. It's when you start to really zoom out and get a perspective on what is considered normal, just the fact alone that pharmaceutical companies market directly to the consumer is insane.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in other countries. That's a uniquely American phenomenon. It's insane.
No, it's a very disgusting culture. These companies.
And then you have these like sexy, pharmaceutical sales reps that go to doctors' offices and like, hey, have you heard about the new whatever? It's a weird, incestuous drug dealing, the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. It's all, but you have to just remove yourself from it. You just don't participate. I don't participate in it, and I know you don't. And so, like I said earlier, if you want to be well, truly well, in a culture where that is not the norm, because look around, it's not, then you have to do things that most people don't do. And you have to not do things that most people do. And that makes you an outlier.
Yeah, you kind of broke up there in the last like quick line. But yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, my grandma that raised me off grid for a certain portion of my life in Ukraine, like literally went to the doctors one time her whole entire life. That's to give birth to my mom. My grandma died at 87 at very good health. And she lived off grid pretty much her whole entire life. She never really had like an actual job or anything of that sort. Just living just instinctually to a lot of the principles we talked about here. You know, it's not too far-fetched. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, people are living longer. It's like, okay, like basically being incapacitated and like in a nursing home for the last 15 years of your life where someone like wipes your butt, I wouldn't consider that living longer. And also, I mean, if you take into consideration child mortality, like hunter-gatherers before even the field of nutrition or personal health coaches or whatever medical science was around, they're pretty much living to about the same age people are today. And I would say they're living in way better health and way more quality than people are living today. Like today, it's like, dude, in a hunter-gatherer society, guys like me and you would be like probably below average. You know, the fact that we're the top 1% right now is the alarming thing. That's the red flag, you know? Dude, the saddest part is like people are like, they've totally normalized it. They've like normalized pathology. It's like totally normal. It's like, this is just what you do and how life is, which is like, that's the saddest part of all, man. I don't know how you kind of deal with that, you know, because I'm pretty sure you see it every day as well.
Well, here's how I deal with it, man. And I'll tell you, like, I went through a phase on my journey where I got really angry about all of this stuff. This idea that governments are in bed with pharmaceutical industry, with the food industry, that we're being poisoned, that it's enough to make you pissed. And I got really pissed. And I just wanted to, I don't know what, I wanted to rebel. Like there's a real revolutionary thing that lives inside of me and it's part of me. And I learned that, you know, the most efficient revolution, the real revolution, is to get yourself in order, to not participate in this stuff. to live as an example of what's possible, to become whole, to become well. That is the warrior's work of our times, to be healthy, to be happy, to be fulfilled. That is the revolution, and each man's life is his own revolution. And so that's the responsibility that I claim, is to get myself in order, to continue to grow, and to try to inspire some people to do that along the way. And if that appeals to you, then get with me and we'll talk. And I'm trying to lead a movement of men who are strong, not just physically strong, but strong in mind, body, and spirit. And so that's the revolution. That's how I deal with it. I rebel tenaciously and aggressively every day, but not in a way that's angry or in a way where I go to protests. That's not my revolution. My revolution is my daily life.
Yeah, and even like small things people can do. I mean, there are so many things, but even like trying to work remote initially can provide that distance, to make you think, to allow you to think a little bit more clearly, because even working remotely can give you an extra like hour or 2 hours every single day to yourself, so you can sleep in a little bit more and be more well rested, think more clearly. Also, you can kind of distance yourself from like what I find to be, and not agree with me here, but I take a strong stance at this, is just the pathology of corporate work. There's just, it's very, very hard to like optimize your mental and physical health in today's corporate environment, especially the bigger the company, the worse the problems are. It's just, and it's very tough to think clearly and also just think in a very healthy and sustainable way and succeed in that environment being there. So the more you can kind of distance yourself from there, just the better you will be, in my opinion, and from my observation. Because if you kind of continue to, which I find is what healthcare kind of has to succumb to today, they're not even trying to change anything. They're really just more in the mindset of like, how can we stay in this cesspool or swamp of pathology and just learn how to survive? So they're always tinkering, maybe we could just give this guy some anti-anxiety medication so he can work more, numb him out here. We can, 10 years later, when his blood pressure is through the roof because he's working way too many hours and under way too much stress, we can just give him these medications. Then we can get like 5 more years out of him before his heart explodes or something of that sort. Instead of just saying like, man, wouldn't it be easier if we just like stepped out of the swamp,
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I hear what you're saying. What if we as a culture or society just did this or did that? But that will only happen when enough individuals remove themselves from the game. And so that's like, to my earlier point, the real revolution is, how are you managing yourself as an individual? Concern yourself with nothing else other than that. Are you participating in the game that you don't believe in? Then make the plan to remove yourself. But that's the real revolution for me. It's individual. Your revolution is your daily life, and it'll drive you crazy. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? We should do this. Bring it all the way local. All the way local. What's your relationship like with yourself? That's the sole focus. And if enough people make that shift and claim that responsibility, then it'll change. But that'll just happen.
Where do you feel it's kind of like society is headed these days? More of the same, or getting worse, or it's kind of tough to tell. Like sometimes you see hints of progress, but then it's like, then you see like the C word come around and everyone all of a sudden like drops their core values and all their ideals, when a little bit of fear kind of hits their nerves, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in this, in a bit of a nihilistic view, and maybe this conversation is tending toward that a little bit. Like, things are so bad, things have never been worse, people are crazy, there's evil, oppressive regime. But we've also never been safer. Things are changing for the better. So I don't know. Life, I would imagine human life has always been chaotic, a mixture of good and evil, sanity and insanity. And I don't think that the times that we find ourselves in here now are any different than they've ever been. it's like I said, and I'll just keep harping on this point. You just have to strongly determine which side you're on and live in a way that reflects that. That's the best a man can do.
Well, are there any other topics you want on, Mike? I'm happy to kind of like explore any topics you want to kind of go on.
No, I just wanted to let the guys know who might be listening. I'm going to be offering a course, a 12-week course online. We're going to be starting February 13th, Monday evenings. We'll go to May 1st. So Monday evening, 6:30 p.m. PST. And it's just going to be a 12-week journey into what we talked about before, like this idea of taking 2 steps back to then take 5 steps forward. So the course is called Masculine Vitality. It's offered for men only, and it will be about cultivating energy, to have a look at your life, to see where you're leaking energy, to make the necessary adjustments over a 12-week period, so that you start to live in an energetic surplus. And an energetic surplus births creative energy. You have the energy that's required to do the things that are meaningful to you. In my experience, both personally and professionally, like we said earlier, there's a lot of information out there. Sometimes a man comes to a point in his life where he knows he needs to make a change, but there's so much information, there's so much things he feels he has to do. It's paralysis by analysis. You don't know where to start, so nothing changes. But the way I've designed this curriculum, it's appropriate for any man wherever they're at on their health journey. The way I've designed the curriculum is to, like, slow and steady wins the race. We're going to make daily lifestyle modifications in a way that's easy to metabolize, and progressively learn how to cultivate more energy. So I'm very excited about it. I've poured a lot of heart, and smart into it.
Okay.
And it's going to be good.
Cool.
It's going to be
fun. And
I'll
get the link from you, Mike, later, so people can just kind of option to make it easy for them as well.
Yeah.
So thanks again for being on a guest. It's great to see you as well. Hopefully we can connect in the future sometimes. And thank you everyone who jumped in on the live as well. Wishing you guys the best this weekend. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.